Um, you and I have to catch up. Are you gonna be at the symposium in September? Oh, I'm there too. I'll see you then.
Woo!
Good. So we'll have our personal update catch up there.
Yeah, yes.
And today we will be obviously recording this. It's recording now. We'll be editing it down and then sharing it with our members. And we have about 30 people in the cohort right now. So a lot of people will see this, the pre-recorded, since it's in the middle of the day, but we have a couple people here. Monique is here. She is our assistant. She lives in New Zealand. So you have Monique
Mm.
here, which will be managing the chat and any of the people coming in.
Wonderful. That's my bucket list place is New Zealand to visit.
Yeah, well, we'll have to all go and visit Monique. She's an amazing herbalist, and we all need to go visit you
Mm,
in New Zealand. Monique's
sure.
like, yes, yes, that's a good idea. Good. Well, I'm just so excited too, Shana, to be here with you today because I actually don't really know your story. And some people come into these sessions that I know pretty well, and we've had a lot of conversations about our past. But the way I know you and the way I understand you is as an amazing field herbalist and botanist. And you really show up in keying out plants. And I know you've worked with Michael Moore. You have this amazing herbal history. But you and I have taught together at the Women's Herbal Symposium. Well, I wasn't teaching, I was working in wellness, which I'm doing again this session. But you were a teacher there, and also we've taught at the Oshala Herb Camp as well. And our dear friend Elise, that we know and love, is our connector of many
Yeah.
sorts. So I am very honored to be your colleague and your co-facilitator in many spaces. And yet, this is our first time that we get to do storytelling together.
Yeah.
So I get to ask you a lot of questions and be a student of yours today. So I'm curious if you would like to share for all of us. A lot of people are here just starting their practice, starting their professional life, thinking about maybe having their own school, their own product line, their own practice. I would love to just hear from you really when herbalism came into your life, what that looked like from the beginning. And we will get to where it is now eventually today.
Okay, let's see. Well, thank you. Of course, the feeling is incredibly mutual. I have admired you and your work for many years, and then when I got to meet you at the Women's Symposium, all of that admiration just excelled because you're also an amazing person. So thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate it.
You're
And I love
so
story time.
sweet.
So let's see. I moved to Oregon in 1997 from Michigan, and I had always been a nature kid, but when I moved to Oregon, I didn't really know what I wanted. I was in my late teens, early 20s. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted it to have something to do with nature. And then through the people that I met, I started taking just basic classes about anything that was interesting to me. And herbal medicine very quickly became the thing that was like, oh, this is really cool. So I did an herbal apprenticeship with Cherie Capps at the Center for Herbal Studies, and that was lovely. But I wanted to dive more into a little bit more of the esoteric witchy ways. And so I found Colette Gardner at Blue Iris Botanicals, and she was offering a advanced herbal clinical um, apprenticeship. So I dove into that and I really appreciated that. And I thought I was going to be done. I thought, okay, I've done the advanced clinic, I'm going to be done. And then she had some guest teachers come. And, in the realm of herbal medicine, because we don't have licensure, every herbal school is going to be slightly different, which means most people are going to go to multiple schools because you get multiple perspectives. So Colette had Stephen Yeager and Howie Brownstein from the Columbine School come to do a day in the field. Well, most of the people in my class had already done Columbines. So it was just three of us with two teachers. We went out all day in the field And by the end of that day, I was like, okay, where do I sign up? Take my money. Like this is the next thing. And looking back on it, I was absolutely right on that being the next thing because I ended up doing everything that Columbine's offered their first and second year, and then their advanced clinic. And I did everything twice as a teacher trainer. Um, and I was going to continue, I was starting to teach with them. And then Howie was a guest teacher for Michael Moore for many, many years. And he came to me and said, look, this is Michael's 27th and final year. This would have been 2005. So he was talking about 2006. This is Michael's last year. While you're going to know a lot of what he says because I teach it, Howie would teach a lot of his stuff. But this is your last chance to learn with the master. Michael was already on dialysis regularly. He was already suffering with end stage renal failure. So this was his final year. He said, this is your opportunity. And I was at a transitory point in my life that it was like, oh, I could do anything. I could do anything. So I packed up and I moved to Arizona. And I was one of Michael's work trade students, which meant that my job, other than like showing up and making the tea, which was like, here is this whole apothecary of dried herbs, make tea. And we're like, how do you do that? How do we choose? They're like, yeah, make it up. Like, okay. So that was a really good experience in making tea because it was just like, here, do it. But also, like my little claim to fame before I started my own school was that I am the press record and press stop of Michael's recorded classes that you can still out access now today. That also meant I had no creative control. I couldn't move anything. I only got to press record and press stop. But it also meant that my voice, in terms of asking questions and reacting to his hilariousness, was closest to the microphone. So I'm kind of known for either a really cute laugh or a mildly obnoxious laugh. That's part of my little claim to fame. Um, Once I took Michael's, during Michael's, I realized very quickly because it was his last year, they had let a lot of people in. And I noticed that a lot of people weren't keeping up with his lectures. He was very advanced in the way that he lectured. And it was just assumed that you knew all the basics. What do bitters do and how do they work in the body? All of these types of things. What about essential fatty acids? And these were all things that I had already been teaching with the Columbine School. So I started offering beginner classes to all of my co-students. So I got experience that way. And then from there, so that was my fourth herbal apprenticeship in like 8 years. And then from there, Howie used to teach at a massage school in Southern California that his friends that he went to high school with taught at, or I should say started. It was their school. And Howie decided to retire from that and pass his classes on to me. So I took on 24 hours of classes. I started commuting to San Diego a couple times a year to teach. And then I realized, like, I tried to start a school after Michael's. I tried to start a school in Prescott, Arizona. I thought it would be good place because there wasn't a school, and that Prescott University or Prescott College is very nature based, ecology based. Um, yeah, that didn't work. I got like two people coming on plant walks. I was an adjunct teacher at Prescott College. I did everything I could. It didn't take off. And I realized that going over to San Diego, this massage school already had lots of students. And so we ended up moving there. I should say here because I'm still here. And I took Howie's 24 hours of classes and turned them into 350 hours over the course of um, 18 years I taught there. I just retired in 23. So it was 100 hours of nutrition and 250 hours of assorted herbal medicine. Um, and that was amazing because I didn't have to market. They got the butts in the seats. They took the money. They just paid me. I really credit Healing Hands School of Holistic Health for giving me the opportunity to just get me in front of people and share my passion. And it just really has taken off from there. And it was wonderful. And I love teaching there, but it was also, there was something missing. And the something that was missing is what you realize is the thing that my primary niche, and that is field studies. Columbine School changed me because they introduced me to plants in the place that they chose to grow, where the plants chose to grow. And I started developing these deep relationships, not just with the medicine and the function and the energetics and the actions, but with the plants themselves in the ecosystems that they grew in. Couple of times, 3 times I came down for the Southern California Botanical Adventure with Columbines. So I also got introduced to this ecosystem. So then when I moved here and I'm teaching for Healing Hands, the one thing that was missing, I would do plant walks for my students, and that was great. But and occasionally go to a farm and maybe harvest. But the thing that was missing was teaching botany, was like really submerging in nature. So I started developing weekend workshops and that type of thing. And primarily I was getting Healing Hand students. But then through this, I also started connecting with different teachers of Southern California and realizing there's a robust herbal community in Southern California. We're so widespread and we've got millions and millions of people here that we didn't all know each other until our friend Elise started Theravada Herbal Symposium. And she had actually taken my herbs class at Healing Hands. She didn't do massage. She just saw that there's a local herbs class after she did the California school. And she was like, oh, I need to do this. So at that point, I met Elise. We became friends. And then she started doing Theravada. And, um, and so from there, I met Julie James and Rebecca Altman and a bunch of other herbalists. And we started the Southern California Herbal Community. And that was Gosh, I moved here in 2008 officially. I started teaching here in 2006. I moved here in 2008, and everything has just been growing and growing and growing ever since then. I started our field apprenticeship. My first business name, I think this is hilarious. I'm not super creative in my naming. So my first business name was like, well, what do I do? I teach about herbs and I teach about nutrition. So we'll call it Herbs and Nutrition. That was fine. It explained what I do. But it was actually how he came to me in a dream a couple of years later. And he's in that dream. It was when I came down here with him studying ecology, and he said, welcome to Sage Country, as he introduced us to white and black sage. And I woke up from that dream going, Sage Country herbs. I live in Sage Country. So that's where our name came from as we started doing our field program back in. I started the like weekend workshops in 2012, and then our first official like out in the field for 5 months was 2014. And it's
Wow.
just really, we hold an inch. So it's just grown from there.
I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm going to just bring Elise in here for a minute because she, as everyone knows, is the owner and founder of Oshala Farm. And she calls herself an herb school junkie, which makes me very happy because it sounds like you are as well. And I am too. Like anytime I can do a training with someone that I can dive into their world, I do my best. At this point, with 2 kids that are teenagers in my life, it's harder to spend that, like you said, that like intense amount of time. There's always a window in our lives where we can do that intensity for years or a year, whatever that is, right? And now I'm not in that stage anymore in my life, but I will at some point be able to do that again. But I am recognizing here the thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, which is we are, we are in an apprenticeship career and actually honoring
Yeah.
that like, like every herb school is different, every teacher is different, like we are learning from these masters of their craft and their art and their lineages, and that actually I believe deeply that in the era of AI we'll become more human and we'll have more need and more connection. I think that's it already exists, the need for more connection, since we're in an epidemic of loneliness, but the need for the intention behind mass culture to be more in tune with nature and each other. There's always going to be the group of people that are never really interested in that in the first place. But you're just reminding me of the amount of depth that we go through as herbalists to get where we are, the amount of money we put into these, the amount of sacrifice, the amount of time, the amount of life force we put into these fields to work with individuals and go and journey with these people and study. It is actually the path of any successful herbalist I know. It is the most consistent path of diving into the apprenticeship of it. And so thank you so much for sharing that, because I think the lens and the worldview around what makes a successful herbalist, that is the consistency that I've seen over and over and over again. And you're already offering that now.
Read.
You're offering it in your own school to work with you as a botanist and as a, what would you call yourself? A clinical herbalist, an energetic. I mean, Michael Moore is a clinical, energetic,
Yeah.
medical, I don't know, hyper region, bioregional herbalist. I'm curious how you would, what term you have used to describe yourself.
So in general, I do call myself a clinical herbalist. I've been working clinically for around 25 years or so. Um, it's not the primary thing that I do, but it's definitely a part of my herbal personality. Um, I teach field botany. I do not actually have a degree from a university in botany. So, in like the California Native Plant Society, I'm an amateur botanist.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time, and the way that I learned botany, and of course I credit Columbines with this, is I didn't just learn plants in their ecosystems. I learned how to learn plants. So that's how Howie teaches, is it's not just about memorizing this stuff. It's about, how do you see yourself as part of this ecosystem? How do you get to know your neighbors? And so in being even just an amateur botanist, I have an ability to get people to realize that they are actually already a part of this world, this natural world. And so I'm a field botanist. I'm not a laboratory botanist. I am a field botanist. I do all of my learning in the field. Of course, I reference online, I reference in books, but I do my learning in the field with the plants. So I'm definitely a field botanist. And because I also teach nutrition for many years, I just call myself a health educator. It's
Mm-hmm.
just more of a generalized term. But I'm a lifelong learner, as you pointed out. That's to me what, like, a really good herbalist. I've been taking a class with, I know you have as well, with Chenchal Cabrera
Yes,
on
good.
cancer. And I love, one of the first things she says is, any practitioner of health, whether it's herbal or doctor or acupuncture, it doesn't matter. Any practitioner of health, if you're not continuously studying
That's
and
right.
learning more, then you are getting behind, because health is a constant, ever changing canvas. And so that's to me what every herbalist, like, I love the term herbs are medicine for the people around the world. And that means that every herbalist should be a lifelong learner, because there's no way we'll possibly learn everything about herbs from every different perspective. And, being down in Southern California, one of my absolute favorite parts of living down here, um, is the fact that I am surrounded by more diversity than I have ever experienced anywhere else that I lived. So I have gotten to take classes from people from South America, do ceremony, people from Mexico, from Central America, curanderos. Like, there's so many. I've had people from Japan and Korea and India. Like, I've had neurologists take my classes. Like, there's such a diversity of people and thought down here. It just feeds that forever learner that we all really are.
I love that so much. The the concept of an amateur is something that I think about a lot, because most herbalists are nonlinear learners anyway. They've not gone on the traditional academic route, or if they have, they jump off of it to join herbalism since it's a non-traditional academic route, right? It's very academic, it's extremely intellectual. And yet it's this piecemeal version of, if you want to become an herbalist, here are your 1,000 options to become one, right? Like it's overwhelming, I'm sure, for a lot of people that don't have a very clear direction of where they want to end up. So they just take a lot of different things, which I think is a beautiful thing. But Paul Stamets is an amateur mycologist because he is not formally trained as a mycologist. And he calls himself that, but it's because the Mycology Society calls him that. It's not because he's an amateur mycologist, right? And it's these fascinating places that I think imposter syndrome comes in so deeply in our field, where because we're not PhD herbalists or
Mhm.
master degree herbalists, because that's virtually, there's only one place in the world that gives you a master's degree unless you're in Europe, and that's only in the UK. And that's not even, I would say to all of you, it's comparable with every herb school that is a good herb school is their master's degree here in the States. I mean, truly. So why spend 60,000 if you can spend, 10 on a 3 year, and anyway, that's just my thing. But this idea that it's not valid enough because it doesn't have a PhD behind it is something I think about probably more than I should. Because the respect from the world, number one, respect for ourselves, I think should be number one, number two, right? And then respect for ourselves enough to go out there and get what the respect that we need, show up, tell people about the experience we have, tell people that we are good enough. And so that's why I think a lot of reframing our career as an apprenticeship career, because it's like a trade, right? Where it is a true trade, where the more we learn from people, actually, I think the more internal credibility people get. But how do we share that with the external world? And I think the example that you shared of teaching at a massage school to in fields that you don't have a degree in, but yet are very well trained in and obviously good enough to be able to teach these long courses. And I know very accurate because you know how to do research and you know how to read books. There's a point to all of this. How do you get through that mindset of I'm not enough according to the world, but I know I am enough to put myself out there and to stand up and speak to the world that I know what I'm doing.
The number one thing that pops in my mind when you ask this question has nothing to do with herbal medicine. It doesn't really have anything to do with any part of this conversation. It's about facing fears. I was absolutely terrified of public speaking as a child. I barely spoke outside my nuclear family unit until I was like 5 or 6. I remember having very few friends in um, early adolescence because I just was so nervous about talking. I just was very nervous. I have a very succinct memory of crying before having to give a 9-minute speech in a class in high school. But I also am someone who has always wanted to challenge myself and recognize that facing fears is the best way to grow. And so that 9-minute speech, the topic that I chose to talk about and to research was the very comfortable topic of rape. Like even though I had to do like 9 minutes, like now I could talk about my cat for 9 minutes. Like 9 minutes is nothing for me now, but back then 9 minutes was like, oh my God. Like it was so much. But I challenged myself by talking about something that I felt really needed to have a voice. And so that's really where my brain went when you asked this question is how do you get past imposter syndrome? It's actually challenging your own understanding of being an imposter. It's recognizing that a lot of people that are not academically trained are teaching from their experience. And, I like to say I'm an herbalist that I like to walk a fine line between the scientific perspective and the ethnobotanical, as well as throw in some of the esoteric. Like, I find all three of those really are all different perspectives looking at the same thing, and they're all totally valid. And I don't recognize one as being more important than the other, which is why I didn't choose to go to university and spend that 60 to $100,000. I thought about going to naturopath school, but I didn't want my hands to be tied in the bureaucracy of it all. And once I started doing herb school and I realized like, oh, there's so many different things that you can do as an herbalist, a gardener, a wildcrafter, a medicine maker, a teacher, a clinician. And I'm a double Gemini. I like to do everything. And so I do all of those things. And I find that because like all of those things light me up, teaching being by far the top, that just putting myself in front of people. And then the more you do that, like I remember my very first class that I taught in Eugene, Oregon, after 3 herbal apprenticeships. It was about calming herbs. And I was just, teaching about my own experience with skullcap and valerian. And I remember doing horribly. I remember like my throat was closing and I couldn't get words. Like it was really bad. But I remember seeing some of those light bulbs go off in people's heads, and that fed me energy. And so then when I started doing more teaching, like at Michael Moore's and with Columbines, and realizing that like, oh, actually, I do know this stuff, and I was working clinically, and I'm seeing the stuff work, and you just start getting this feedback from your community. And then I remember when I first started teaching at Healing Hands, the first couple classes I taught were from Howie's, and he handed them on to me, and I got to use his information. Um, and I remember having like a sadness that I used to be part of a community of herbalists. Like in Oregon, there is, you can throw a rock in any direction and hit an herbalist, a naturopath, or a massage therapist. Like there's so many. But in order to really like make a career, you kind of have to leave that pond of comfort, and go somewhere else that really needs herbalists, especially now. We need more herbalists in areas that don't have herbalists. Um, and so I remember being sad that I wasn't surrounded by herbalists, but having this awareness of, oh, I need to train the herbalists. We need more herbalists, and I'm one of the people that can help provide that. And then, within the next couple of years, I started meeting other herbalists from the area and but having that awareness that, oh, when I teach classes here, like this is a massage school. I'm the only herbalist here. So getting over imposter syndrome happened pretty easily through that, just simply because not only did I get all that experience with just being in front of people, but also knowing that like I was the person in the room that kind of knew the most about my topic and getting more comfortable and confident. And then honestly, one of the best things when you teach that much is people come back regularly. They got used to, I trained them by at the beginning of every class asking, so does anybody have any herbal experiences they care to share? Because this is how we learn, not just from studying or listening to somebody talk and internalizing it, but actually experiencing it. Drinking the tea at nighttime before you go to bed, taking the bitter before a meal, like all of these things that people would share these experiences. And, now we have a little email sequence that we send out to our newsletter people called Herb Tales. And they're all these tales that I've gotten from people who are like, oh my gosh, my neighbor, her husband has bad hemorrhoids and they couldn't afford the steroid cream until their next paycheck. And is there any herbs that could be used? And my student was like, well, my herb teacher talked about black tea and some mint to cool the inflammation. So she just told them to take a black tea bag and a mint tea bag and get them wet with cold water and then apply. And they came back to her the next day and said, those two tea bags worked better than the anti-inflammatory steroid cream. They were cheaper. They were easier to work with. They weren't messy. Like they're never going to buy the cream again because now they have like they can just buy boxes of tea. And she was so empowered by that. And like all these like light bulbs going off and you could see people being like, "Oh," and having that like seeing that like flame take off it feeds you so much, and it just like propels you to want to continue sharing. But to also recognize it's not just about like my experience, it's about getting others to have the hands-on experience and then get them to share those experiences, which then leads another person. There's this saying that I say a lot because I learned it. It was on a picture that my mom had on the wall for years and still has. And it says, a candle loses none of its light by lighting another candle. And like, even thinking about it, like, makes me feel a little teary because it's the way that villages have always run. It's not supposed to be about the ego holding on to the information. We, as original tribal people, which all humans are, we're supposed to share. And when we share information, then we get other ideas. And then that causes someone else to go in a different direction and share others. And by doing this, we are affecting our like world community of humans. And this is how we weave our tapestry of life. And the more we do this, the more we all get fed by this universal energy of sharing the knowledge and sharing that energy. And to take that one more step further through this, um, I've developed this verbiage that I've been using a lot lately, and I didn't develop it. I'm sure somebody else has used it. But it's the idea that like win-win-win relationships, we have this idea in capitalism that in order to win, someone has to lose. You have to like dominate on someone. And in my herbal career, I have not found that to be true. I have found that when we create win-win-win relationships, we all get fed, whether it's information or it's money or it's energy, but we all can help bring all of each other up. And then in doing so, we all get to get more out of life. And so it just, the more, when you're on this path and you make a step, I have gotten to the point where it's almost like you can feel a universal wind kind of pushing you. It's like, oh yeah, that's the right path. Keep going in that direction. And as I've done that and as I've listened to that, it's just the path has just opened up. And so now, we work with all these farms. And when you work with farms, you create win-win-win relationships. And now like we're so now embedded in the herbal community, the farming community, the community food clubs. Like there's so much abundance that when we all tap in together, we just get to share the abundance. And that's really what this like life of an herbalist has really shown me, is a life of abundance.
Thank you for sharing all of that. You are so deeply inspiring the way that you speak, and clearly you're very passionate about what you do, which I'm all for. I love it so much. You and I share that
Hmm.
the love for herbalism so much that no matter what we're going to do in life, it's going to be centered around herbalism.
Yep.
I'm going to speak upon this in my experience to mirror what you were sharing, which is when I teach different herbalists at different schools, not just within Verse, but at California School or Berkeley Herbal Center. It is interesting, this idea that there are so many herbalists out there, but living in San Francisco for a long time and now living in Oakland, I have to remind people that herbalists are less than 1% of the population, and that there is actually not enough of us, and that we all have such a specialty education and information that people want, need, are looking for, don't understand, that we actually need to keep going, and we need to be out there saying what we do, teaching classes, seeing clients, whatever that journey is, making medicine, because it actually is unique. There's a lot of people even in the natural product industry who are not trained as herbalists. Like the herbalists that are trained, that have their own products, these are the ones we need to be highlighting more. And that, as you shared, getting out of that feeling of saturation is actually so important, because we should have an herbalist on every corner. And the more herbalists, the better for all of us, because actually herbalists do better when there's more herbalists, surprisingly enough. It's just sort of like the same reason why certain cafes strategically show up across the street from a Starbucks. It's because they do better when a Starbucks is across the street when there's not. For whatever reason, probably because people looking for an alternative to Starbucks, so they're already going with a friend or a partner, or they know where to go, or the location itself is fantastic for foot traffic, whatever that is. But it's that proximity. If we did have an herbalist at every corner, which we have to, I would comparable as acupuncturists. There's a zillion acupuncturists in the world, but they're all busy because people, it's not an obscure idea anymore to go to an acupuncturist. It's actually a very normal thing to do. And I would love herbalism, Western herbalism and clinical herbalism to get there, to get to where people are like, I have an herbalist. What about you? Oh, yeah, you go and see yours. And it becomes this like an acupuncturist, this very typical experience that people have. So, yeah, I'm going to mirror that for you and for our group here because the idea that competition actually exists is false. Like we do better when everyone is thriving and there's more of us. And it's just a fact at this point. So that internalized competition, just let that go. And that's bullshit. But the other piece too that I wanted to reflect and ask you a deeper question about is this win-win-win situation, right? This building of these relationships. You have relationships with farmers and other practitioners and schools and people and other herbalists now. What do you think? Because you've been in San Diego for quite a while now, or in Southern California. I don't know if you're exactly in San Diego, but what do you think is the biggest way that you found that those relationships on building everything from, I know Howie Brownstein brought you into the massage school, but like beyond that, building those types of relationships increases your ability to become a good practitioner. People talk, word of mouth increases, you show up in more events, people get to know each other, and word of mouth is always the best. But how are you building those relationships in a way that you feel is really grounded and easy to identify for other folks to be able to lean on?
Mm,
So let's see. One of the ways that it started was I had a student who was a farmer, and they asked if and I was already doing my field program and I was teaching at the massage school. And I had this farmer say, oh, do you want me to grow anything for you for your school? And I was like, that's not really how my school works. We're like going out to find. So I wasn't working with farms yet at this point. Um, but that was just one. And then they were like, oh, well, would you like to, come and check the farm out? And then when I came and checked the farm out and realized like, oh, actually I could do a plant walk here. And then that started that. And then I connected with another farm friend that wasn't a farmer. Like I actually knew them. I used to be the head chef at a vegan cafe in my early 20s, and I used to make breakfast for this person. And I somebody that I worked with at the cafe was working with them, and they reached out. So this is like, 1,000 miles away, 20 years later, and it turns out like, oh, hey, we're all like our lives are aligning again. And so then here's a second farm that I start working with. And then another thing that happened was as I was starting to cultivate these relationships and just kind of realizing like, oh, wow, okay, so I could do plant walks on farms because mostly I was working with like local parks. But then there was also when people want to buy property for farming down here, like you're spending like $1 to $2 million. You have to do more than just like grow kale and strawberries in order to be able to make your mortgage. And so the real key to being a successful farmer down here is to diversify. San Diego County, which is where I live. I don't live in San Diego proper. Like I'm not actually a big city girl. San Diego County is a pretty large county. So where I live is like the avocado and citrus orchards of North County, San Diego. And we realized very quickly that, we have more farms in San Diego County per capita than most every other county in the continental United States because we have a 12-month long growing season down here. So I just realized that, the more I started integrating with farmers, the more there was like all of this abundance. And then this was happening around the same time as I'm launching my field program. And one thing that I recognized very quickly with the field was, the first field that I did, we were out in the national forest, the Anza Borrego Desert. We were doing that primary. But one thing I do, I always interview anybody that's going to be out in the field. We only take a very limited number of people. And so it's a 2-hour interview. And it's really important to me that people understand that, like, if you're coming to learn about native plants because you want to like start a product line and start like harvesting in the wild, that's actually a red flag for us. We don't want to be encouraging more people amongst 20 million people to be going out and taking from nature. And so very quickly, I realized I had to pivot with my school, with the way I developed it. And learning about the ecology and learning about the native plants where they choose to grow was really valuable. But going to farms, not only is there are what are called hedgerows or native plant pollinator islands that are on farms, and those are native plants that are going to go to flower earlier than a lot of the crops that are planted. They're going to draw in pollinators that are going to help with the pollination of the crops that are planted. So a lot of those, like, hey, we can harvest from some of those sage plants or those yerba santa plants. A lot of farms also will like butt up to BLM land or other native plant areas. Um, so more access in that way. And then also, then the more I started working with farms, I realized like, oh, every time you guys harvest your artichokes, the rest of the plant is going into the compost or being fed to the chickens, but artichoke leaves are what we use the medicine. So here's like a great win-win-win relationship. And so it was just this like slow development. And then, as you mentioned, the word of mouth, like farmers talk to farmers because it's you have to come together. Um, and so I just started really developing these relationships. It was really just a natural evolution. A lot of people have said to me over the years, you shouldn't base your career on your hobby or your passion because then your hobby or passion becomes work. And now you don't like it anymore. Um, I just completely disagree. I completely disagree. And I personally choose to tell every person, especially young people, stumble in the direction of things that light you up. Because when you do that, when you submerge yourself in your passion, doors that you never even imagined open. You don't even know the doors are there, but you're just doing things that you love to do. And then all of a sudden you're in this apprenticeship, or all of a sudden you're in this volunteer, which then opens this other door. And I can't tell you how many woofers I've talked to who have traveled the world learning about farming for free because they're part of a woofer program. Like there's so many ways that when we actually dedicate ourselves, and it's easy to say that looking back now, just like it's easy to say like, oh, preventative medicine is like really the way to go, except if you do it successfully, you don't know what you prevented. So you don't know unless you really have a goal of I want to do this. Like the beautiful part about herbal medicine is that we don't have a set path. There are so many paths to take. You really just have to kind of choose it. And when you really dedicate yourself to that path, that's when different doors open. And how do you work to make those doors and realize those doors are the next stage, And just like with health, I don't feel like you get to a point in herbal medicine as like, I'm an herbalist, ta-da, like here I am. Okay, well, what's next then? Like, what are you going to continue learning? What's going to be your next area? Do you have an area of expertise? Like, how are you going to continue growing? Because that's another part about being an herbalist to me is that, like, there is no plant that says, okay, okay, I've become the plant I was meant to be, and now I am done. Like, there is no being done with being an herbalist. This is just what we do, and it's what I will do forever. My husband likes to say, like, herbalists don't retire, they just expire doing what they love. Like, yeah, what am I going to stop doing? Walking in my garden?
Yeah. I
You know?
tell people often I'll be a very good herbalist at 95. Like I will have reached my peak
Right.
at 95 for sure. And
For
I will
sure.
have earned it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But you're absolutely right. It is a career path and it is a life path, and it's not separate. Especially if you're going to, make a living doing this. I agree 100%. Go towards the thing that brings you joy. And I think many people, most people in the overculture don't allow themselves to go towards joy because they feel like it's selfish. There's these internal dialogues of what it's like to, especially being a woman, to not deserve joy, deserve happiness, blissfulness, that it's fickle, or if it's not serious enough, whatever that is. Every person I know that has any psychic ability says that's the only thing we need to think about in this lifetime is going towards our joy. And that is the message for us internally to find the thing that we're supposed to do here. Supposed to do here is in
Yeah,
quotes, but
absolutely. Can
peace and
I
love.
share a quick story?
Please.
This just happened, and
Oh, yes.
I was like carrying boxes. So I live on this intentional community. It's like 9 acres. There's like 20 people that live there. And so I'm carrying these boxes, and I've got like, my computer bag and my other bag, and I'm carrying this box. And there's this datura plant. It's a native plant, and it's growing right along my walk. And I always stop and say hello. Like, that's part of that esoteric nature. What people think is esoteric, but really, like, plants are live. So if you treat them like they're live, then they actually acknowledge, like, wait, you see me? I see you. And so I stop and I talk to this datura plant, and it's so beautiful. And so it was dusk, and I'm carrying this box, and I walk past it, and it's like kind of shimmering, and I'm like, oh, hello. And I stop and I look at it, and I notice there's three flowers that are, two of them are just starting, and I can actually see them. And, Datura blooms, it's called moonflower because it reflects the moonlight to draw in pollinators at nighttime. And so I'm watching as these two flowers are just barely opening. And I say I'm holding a box because I didn't have time to put it down and grab my phone. But these two flowers, and I'm watching them slowly open. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And I'm staring at them, and I'm just like in this like state of joy and gratitude that I just get to be here while this plant is like blossoming. I mean, it's like seeing someone perform for the first time, because when you see someone like just putting out their joy, like you can get joy from that. And so I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. And now all of a sudden, out of the blue, we've got these two little flowers like la slowly opening. The third one all of a sudden goes, look at me. Poof. And I just like even thinking about it, like it just like was like, look at me. Like it was so profound. And I started crying and I started giggling like I was a little child. And it was just like, I'm so thankful for my life that like finding joy and gratitude in the mundane, I think I stumbled on the secret of life. Because finding like so much joy and like literally feeling the oxytocin and the dopamine like squirting in my body just from watching a flower open. Like, wow, like so, so cool. And yet, like, I also like have a little bit of sadness knowing that most people are not even going to notice it's there, let alone that there is something that they could get from it. And it was just like, it was such a profound experience, and it just happened. And it's just these experiences happen a lot because I'm open to them. And that's why I encourage people to just stumble in the direction because it'll happen,
Oh,
whatever it is.
so beautiful. I remember this actually brings me to something I was going to bring up earlier, which is the perfect segue. When I started at the California School of Herbal Studies in 2005, Jason and Rebecca, who are the owners of the school, who continue to be, he opened up the first day and says, "This is a school of relationships. I apologize if you thought you were going to herb school." And the longer I'm an herbalist, the more I understand what that means. And you were talking about the relationships with farms and, other practitioners, et cetera. But the relationship with the natural world and the relationship with ourselves is what we dive into in this field. It's not a surface level relationship. It's not a do this and you're going to make $1 million no matter what and go into investment banking relationship. It is a deepening the human experience and the spiritual experience within the human experience relationship, and with plants, with the different experiences with plants, with the different energies that they express in the world, the different ways that they heal us, the ways that we heal each other, the ways that we're healing ourselves and our community and our families. So it is the thing I come back to the most. And again, the longer I do it, the more I understand why he said that from day one, which is the most beautiful view of what does it mean to even be human. We are wired to be social creatures. Loneliness is the same as smoking a pack of cigarettes. It is damaging to our physical health as much as it's damaging to our emotional and spiritual health. We have to have relationships to be alive. Plants are our ancestors. They were here far before we were, and they are the ones who have guided us and fed us and nurtured us and kept us alive this entire time. So these relationships that we're building is we're just doing it through herbalism, right? That's our lens of those relationships. And we get to have what a beautiful lens, right? It encompasses culture and encompasses healing and encompasses botany and academia and spirituality and tradition and modern, use and research and science and astrology, even if you want to throw that in there. But none of it's disconnected. It's all the same in the same field. And it's just so rich in that way. And I know you and I can just talk about why we love it so much all day long. But I think to speak to it in a business like lens for anyone here, I understand the barrier to the majority of people trying to do herbalism for a living is the mindset. It comes from not having the confidence to pivot or to change or to try something new or to go towards their passion that I want them to, right? I want every person here to have the ability to say, I'm just going to do it. Fuck it, right? It's the thing that I love and I'm going to figure it out, right? We can't give that to people, sadly. I wish I could, because then I would be doling it out like candy. But I think underneath it is that I have to figure this out. I have to do it. I love it so much. So I think the allowing the love and the passion there fuels the dopamine, fuels the watching the flowers, fuels the ability to say, and I will figure it out. I
Mhm.
don't think it's the other way around. I don't think it's I'm going to figure out and my reward will be later. The dopamine will
Right.
show up later. I really believe the passion, the bliss, the connection, the desire has to be first, because we need essence to figure it out and to trust the path, no matter what that nonlinear journey. Sometimes we're only seeing 2 inches in front of our face on what's next, right? So thank you for sharing the magic and the mystery and the beauty of that beautiful datura unfurling in front of your eyes. I mean, my heart just opened so deeply when you said all of that. Like, I wish I was there with you so badly. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's been an hour, almost an hour since we started talking. So I am so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I could talk to you for 17 hours, which I'm hoping to do at Symposium with you in a couple of weeks at the Women's Herbal Symposium for anyone that wants to come, Northern California Women's Herbal Symposium in Humboldt County. But now I'm going to open it up for questions, because we have another 30 minutes that I will have other people ask. If there are not any questions or if people are too busy, I have many other questions that I will dive into, but I'm going to open it up now for the group to unmute themselves and ask any questions that they want to, or put in the chat. Brittany.
Hey, Shana.
Hey, Brittany.
Thanks for this conversation. This has been a really beautiful one to listen into. Um, I was wondering about what you'd say to how do you know when you're ready to teach an herbalism related topic, I guess?
Mm.
That's a great question.
Like I said, with the very first class that I taught, it was on calming herbs because that was what, like, I consider calming herbs and culinary herbs to kind of be the gateway topics into herbal medicine. So, I had been a cook for many years before I got tendonitis so bad I couldn't hold a chef's knife anymore, which was, my life being like, oh, yeah, you're not meant to be a chef. You're meant to just enjoy cooking. Now let's go do this other thing. So I learned about those. But what I had the most experience with was calming herbs. They helped me with sleep. They helped me with mostly with stress. There's a lot of stress to being, a teenager, young adult. I moved away from my family. I moved across the country from my family. I was terrified and yet also incredibly driven to do something different. Um, and so there was a lot of stress in that early life experience, and calming herbs were just so important to me. So that was the very first class I ever taught of my own choosing. Like I had taught some with the Columbine School, but I was literally teaching what they trained me to say. My first class that I wrote, that I organized, and that I went to the local, I think it was called Living Earth Herbs. It was just a little herb shop in Eugene, and was like, hey, can I teach a class here? And they're like, yeah, we'd love to host you. And so it was just, you know, I had enough experience and stories of my own using calming herbs that I felt like I could answer questions. Because I feel like when it comes to fear of teaching, um, it's not just that like imposter syndrome. I think a lot of people are terrified that they're going to get questions that they don't know how to answer. And I think that's a really big fear for a lot of people. And I find it funny that like years later now, I find the questions after I've been teaching for so long to be by far the most interesting part of the class because I want to know, how are people internalizing things? How are they relating to the information? Another really important part of this is being able to say, that's a really interesting question. And I don't know. I would be more than happy to do some research, or that is really triggering a lot of things positively in my brain of things that I want to learn about. And so being able to say I don't know, I think makes people a way more powerful teacher than somebody being like, well, and just like talking and talking and talking until it sounds like they've answered something when really they haven't. I have a lot more respect for teachers that say, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. That's a really good question. And so I feel like being able to just like kind of sidestep around some of the fears that a lot of people have. And then once again, going back to that, like, this is the nature of being human. I mean, really, and I would say it's the nature of being alive is that we share information. Animals share information, plants share information. Teaching is a form of sharing information. And when we kind of pull back and look at it as that instead of the hierarchical perspective of teaching of like you are the like, do I know enough to say that I know more than you, like that doesn't really serve the herbal community as much as just sharing our experiences together. And the longer you do it, the more experience you have. And so and then the other component of that is um showing up in your community in whatever ways, like being at the farmers market and talking to people, if there's little local gatherings, like just showing up and getting to know different people. I mean, around here, we have so many retreat centers that are looking for people to do classes. So many people who, bought property and don't know what plants are growing on their land. And so they want me to come in and do a consult, or millions literally of people who have become disillusioned with Western medicine and are looking for any other perspective. Um, I also worked retail for years. And when you work retail in a health and beauty aid, you learn about vitamins, you learn about nutrition, you learn about herbs. You also get trained on products. Like that gives you more. It's like the more you know, the more not only do you want to know, but also the more experience that you have to be able to say, like, oh, I'm going to try that. And now trying that gives you the experience to be able to talk about it. It's just about walking the walk. And the more you walk the walk, you just naturally talk the talk. And then the more you do that, people see that. And then the doors just kind of open. And a lot of things, it's not that I plan to do them, it's that they just kind of happen. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I love that. And then new things open. So I just, I think the best answer I can give you is to just keep doing it. And the more you do it and the more you explore, um, there are people that are just forever students. Not like I'm a forever student, but like also like, okay, you've been taking classes for 40 years. You have information to share. You've been taking classes for 10 years. You have information to share. Like everybody has information to share. And the more we can get comfortable, and oh, seeing a little one reminds me like, oh my gosh, the amount of nature schools and the amount of people that start programs for kids to get connected to nature, they need people like us. They need people that are inspiring young people, because like when you inspire young people to be connected to nature, that plants the seed that they will go back to, whether they realize it consciously or not. And so being involved in the world of being, a mother, a parent, being involved in the world of children, that alone is going to open up so many doors. So that's a great way. And, the other thing about children is you teach children how to like, make a plantain salve. They're not going to be asking like, can I use this on skin cancer? They're not going to be asking like these intense questions that make you feel like uncomfortable. Like they're like little sponges, and then they're immediately going to go and take what you say and share it. And so it's such a great experience to have that you're already kind of like that foothold in. If you're already a parent, you're already in those communities, and that's a great place to get your chops up of teaching, not just the kids, but the parents of the kids. They want to know, like, what's the point of having this calendula boo-boo salve? What can I use it on? Like that is a great segue into teaching more. So thank you for the inspiration. I saw the little one. I was like, oh yeah.
I've actually never thought of that as being like a segue in as like the way you described. So that's yeah, I have to see. Very recently having a child, so I haven't had that come up yet, but I'll see where it takes me, I guess.
It will.
I'm also a middle school teacher though, and so yeah, and that has yet to segue into my herbalism life at all, but
I have so much respect for a middle school teacher. Those are tough ages. The segue of puberty, of kids figuring out who they are, like that is like I have a lot of respect for you in that career path as well.
oh, thanks. Yeah, they have like the brain of a child, but then they have like adult hormones. It's very scary sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that too, Shana, on scope, because I think that's where herbalists, I'm always within or aware of the boundaries of my experience and my practice. And yes, it's gotten bigger as the longer I've done it, the more trainings and the more education. And it's morphed into some direction versus another that I might have started with. But we all come against our edges no matter how long we've been teaching or practicing in this space. And I encourage, same as Shana, just get out there and do something for the community inside your scope. And that could be creating, green salves from plantain, or like nighttime teas that are safe while pregnant, whatever that is. And we have to utilize our own life experience in these spaces to understand our scope. And also as a fellow mother, a lot of what I do as a mother, I now can say from an N of one experience. So I'm the individual, but also now I've supported a lot of people with children. The safety and the use of herbs that are safe for people. A lot of people are very afraid during that stage of their lives, pregnancy, nursing, infants. So, oh yes, someone who's, oh yes, Amber's talking, so I'll read it in a minute. But I just want to reiterate that over and over again with Shana, because the confidence piece that I keep coming back to, it's like you'll get confident, as Shana shared earlier, when you see people reacting and responding and asking questions and saying thank you, and I say start practicing for free if you want to, just to get the feedback of people saying it worked or it didn't, and I would like more insight. Whatever it is, it's getting out there, and it's free classes at a holistic pet or vet place if you work with pets. That's just top 5 herbs for dogs that have arthritis, whatever that is. It doesn't actually matter as long as you're confident in that one thing that you're teaching. And you can always say, I don't know, but let me get you that other practitioner that does know. Or, that's outside of my scope. But what I do know is this. I say I don't know all the time because I cannot know everything. That's not how my brain, that's how anyone's brain actually works. They can't
No.
know everything. You can't know everything. But I thank you for that, Shana, because scope of practice is where we're all at all the time. And we should be. We should always understand our boundaries. And I think David Hoffman said this well, who was my clinical teacher. He said, question everyone, especially me. Right? We're all sharing what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. And maybe we forgot it different. Maybe it changed since the last time we researched something. And now, wait, black cohosh doesn't actually touch estrogen receptors, but it's a SERM. So it's a selective estrogen receptor modulator. And like things change, right? And you might not be updated on that thing. So we get to be the students when we're teaching, for all of you, and especially you, Brittany, being a middle school teacher. You understand like a lesson plan and how to do learning objectives and all the things that come with teaching. But how cool it'd be to teach. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler. How cool it'd be for me to know that they're being taught that wild yarrow that's growing on the edge of their school, that someone's going and like teaching them about that in school versus me walking around and being the mom is like, look at this yarrow and you can da, 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 da. So I encourage you to teach in the school if you can.
And free classes are it's the foundation of everything,
That's
really.
right.
It's just sharing information. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Brittany looks like she's about to chime back in or not. I'm not too sure about your baby and the
Oh
situation.
no, I'm being going back and forth with the baby here. Thank you so much for that response.
Good. Good, good, good. I know Amber put a chat here. BS and Botany. Yes, Amber has a beautiful seasonal product line. Yes, good. Good, good, good. I'm glad it has been helpful
See you
to
next
be
week.
aware of these possibilities. I'm curious if there's, I know Amber has to go. Yes. I'm curious if there's any more questions for Shana.
I
Monique.
do. I feel like you've had so many little great little nuggets that I've been writing down, but I loved the stumble in the direction and it'll happen because I feel like that's very much what I've been doing with trying to. My dream is to grow all my own herbs and then make them into products. So very much in the beginning stages of growing, and I had very trial and error. Um, and yeah, but I've just been admiring all of your books in the background, and I'm wondering if you have any like good resources, good books, good information yourself on that, like really like growing herb stage. I also loved how you said notice where they like to grow themselves in nature, because I've definitely been putting them in spots and then some of them don't like it, so changing them around.
Unfortunately, Monique, this is one of the places where I can say I honestly don't know. I am not a master gardener. I call myself gardening curious because I learned to garden in Oregon and it's really easy. You put a seed, you forget about it, it grows. Southern California is not that way. It is not very forgiving. Um, I have one of the things I've had to become aware of down here is that you deal in working with the realm of life, you deal with more death than you do of life. That like more seeds, more plants die from, for whatever reason. And so unfortunately, I don't have a good answer to your question. I have like I bought a native plant called yerba manzo, which it's one of my absolute favorite plants, medicines down here, Anamopsis californica. I bought one. I know it needs to be by water, so we put it out in the garden. But then we had to go to Oshala's herb camp, and so we left. And then when I came back, it was like almost dead because it was a heat wave while we were gone, and the well went out, and so it wasn't getting water as much as often as it should have, and it was just like like I love this plant so much. It felt like such a little like ally, and now I have brought it back to life, and now we plant it in the shade. But I had to realize like, oh, when I bought it from the nursery, it was in the shade, and then I just went and planted it in the sun. That didn't work. And so then I nursed it slowly, and now we've planted it in more of a shady, little bit of dappled light, and now it's coming back. And so, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of good response to your question because that is just another realm that I'm debating. Like, do I want to do a master gardening class course? I mean, maybe I should because it's definitely like another direction that I could learn about, but I know there's so much. Like I've thought about this with
I
many
am
different.
only doing this because of you said maybe I should. So
Ah.
anytime someone says should, I always say, nope, you should do it. Nope, it's gone. Because the shoulds, like shit the shoulds, like if they don't exist, like do you want to, right? There's a million options out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I jumped
Yeah.
it.
No problem. But yeah, I mean, I love the reference material, but I don't actually have a set. There's numerous gardening books, but like where I live and the type of gardening books that are appropriate for this zone of 9 and 10 are not useful. And just like most of my original gardening books were in Oregon, and none of those work down here like at all. And so, not knowing your ecosystem, my understanding is that New Zealand is kind of like the West Coast, where it goes from some parts are like more desert, some parts are more rainforesty. I'm more in the like deserty, coastal area where I'm at. And so yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you about growing plants.
That's okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Monique, I would dive into a permaculture book that's probably local to New Zealand because permaculture is the idea of watching the earth naturally and the way that water naturally goes and flows and plants that naturally grow, and then you kind of build your cultivation around observing nature. And I love permaculture for that reason. So if you're looking at more of like a worldview, like you were just saying, you plant something, it's not working. I think permaculture is going to give you a stronger foundation for really understanding your own land and the own ecosystem that you're currently at. And it'll help you define where the water rich plants going, where the drier plants going, where am I doing, vertical gardens versus, that's permaculture. That's what they do the best out of any kind of gardening group of people that I've found. And herbs should thrive naturally, right? This idea that we have to water them a ton, if yes, that exists, but the goal is to not have to if we don't need to, because some of them really do thrive in dry environments. So hopefully you can find a permaculture person in New Zealand that is going to talk about your specific bioregion. Great. I love a good library as well. None of you can see my library, but it's right next to me.
I
Oh,
was trying to decide, like, where should I set my computer up? Ooh, the library.
books. Books
Yeah,
are
yeah.
always good. I know I
Oh,
recognize a number of them in the back without having to
yeah.
go that deep. And
There's actually a question that you had sent me yesterday that I was kind of excited.
great. Dive in.
Okay. Um, it's kind of a combination of two of the questions. How did you develop your 2-year herbal program? Was it something you intentionally designed from the beginning, or did it evolve in response to what students were asking for? And then the other one was, um, your work is incredibly experiential, field botany, wildcrafting, medicine making, ecology, and time outdoors. How did you turn something so hands-on and plant-based or place-based into a business model that is financially sustainable? So kind of the combination of those two I wanted to address, because they really, like, these questions that you sent me were amazing, and I really got me, like, I swear I was just like chewing on them all night. Like, um, so
Once again, we could talk for 17 hours. So
yes, we
thank
could
you for jumping and just
easily.
sharing the gems that you need to share before we end today.
Yeah. Um, so I'm one of those people where it's like, okay, do we need that? Oh yeah, I can do it. I can do it. Like I'm a juggler. Like I'm always doing multiple things, and you get to a certain point when you're a juggler of life that you realize, like, okay, I have one or many too many balls in the air right now, and I'm still trying to offer my time out. Um and so, first I at the massage school, I had a first year. And then after I had done that for a few years, I wanted to dive more into like some clinical stuff. So then I developed a clinical, and it started small. And then, um, and so I was teaching those regularly. And then I started my field program in my own school. And so then I'm doing that. And because I was at the massage school and I taught there quite a lot, I didn't actually have any additional time to really develop a second year field program. Um, but I did slowly start, um, I did slowly start evolving and doing more like my own clinical class. Like I remember at one point the massage school was having trouble filling my clinical class because it had this prerequisite. And they said, well, what would you say about us just not running your clinical class? And without even thinking about it, it was kind of a power move on their end that I didn't realize. I just said, oh, that wouldn't be no problem because I offer it through my own school. So I'll just tell them to go take it from me. And all of a sudden, just like that, they offered it. And I was like, oh, wow, I played the power game without realizing I was playing a power game. Okay, fine. Um, but I started like I had that clinical class, and then I took my nutrition class from there and I reorganized it and I changed the name because I wasn't trying to compete. And then I had that and and I remember at one point a student being like, well, Shana, why don't you just have a 2-year program? And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, I've taken your field program, I've taken your clinical program, I've taken your nutrition program. You already have a 2-year program. You're just offering it in little chunks here and there. And I was like, oh, that's right. I do have enough information. And so we just started putting it all together. And then I'm teaching all of it. I'm teaching the first year and I'm teaching the second year at the same time. And I'm teaching the field class, and it's and then finally at one point, during the pandemic, everything went online with the massage school. So my hours got cut dramatically. And all of a sudden, I had all this extra time to develop my second year field and to really continuously develop the full program. And during this time, my husband, who he's now retired, a massage therapist, um, he started learning. He didn't even own a computer until he was like 40. And he started learning about how to speak to a computer and how to program and how to code. And he's listening to me in the back office. And I'm like, he's listening to me year after year after year, do the same thing, say the same thing. And one day he said, online Shana could handle all of this so that you wouldn't have to. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, if we pre-record you, then like you don't have to do all of that. And I'm like, but I love to. I like the interaction. And he was like, how about this? We pre-record your classes and now you offer Q&As. So you get the best part of it, which is the questions. Like I said, they're the most interesting to me. Everybody gets the information. And actually, we could give them more information because nobody can stare at a screen for 6 hours. Like that is not a fundamentally good way to teach. But he took my 3 hours. And first of all, he cut them into half-hour segments so that people could take bite size. And he took all of the words that for me, being a teacher for a long time, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a parasympathomimetic. And I just keep going. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What does that mean? And the coolest thing is that he's not an herbalist. So he's editing my videos as a novice, looking at these 5-syllable words that just tumble out of my mouth because I've used them for so long. And he's like, this is really overwhelming to the novice. So he makes a screen that lays out the word and gives a definition. And like he helped make my teaching better because he saw it through the lens of a novice. And how, because my goal is not to show you how smart I am by using big words. My goal is to empower people to understand things on a deeper level. But sometimes I want to get there too fast, and you need to start with providing a really solid foundation. So the second year program evolved because our students wanted it, but it was having somebody from outside of my own brain to be able to help me reorganize and figure out like, oh, we can make this into a viable business. Because what I was doing was never going to grow into a way that would be sustainable in the long term. And finally, I got to a point after we launched the second year, by 2023, within 2 years of launching that second year, I retired from the massage school because our school had taken off. And now I have, Brandon runs the back end. And so, it doesn't have to be your, life partner, but having another person be able to play different roles, and be able to see things through different lenses that I couldn't because I was so focused on the information, that bigger picture of how do we do automated emails so that everybody is up to speed on what they need, and how do we, like, all of these different things. I needed somebody else to really help, and thankfully in this case it was my husband, who I never thought he'd be part of my business. My business was herbal. He was not an herbalist. He didn't have a computer, so I didn't know how he would, I thought maybe he would do, we co-taught about herbs and massage. That was nice. But once he was able to come in and not try to just follow me around to be my assistant, that was not what I needed. What I needed was somebody from a different perspective with a different lens to help change the trajectory so that we could actually grow into something much more than I ever imagined. Because now we're at like a plateau of like, okay, we've officially made it. We have a 2-year online program, we have a 2-year field program, and then we have 3 short series throughout the year that are like workshops, hands-on workshops that are feeder classes to get people into like, hey, we're doing this thing. You don't have to jump so deep. Come take a series with us, our farm to table herbal skills. Come join us on the farm, or our summer medicine making. Come join us and make medicine. And so we're just like keep finding different ways. And now he's like, can you not make any more stuff? And I'm like, I promise nothing. Because I'm always going to keep creating. But being able to like kind of like pull back and see that growth, and how can you grow, and who are your allies, and being willing to like once again like recognize like, while yes, I'm very thankful that I've gotten really good feedback. I've now had thousands and thousands of students between all the different schools, and that is wonderful. But to be able to recognize like it really does take a village to do anything. And so having those allies that want to work with you, that want to be part of this growing, this growing entity that is playing a good role in our community. Like that is a big part of what, me and my husband came together and we do good things for our community. That's one of our vows together that we want to do together. And this school just happens to be a really good vehicle for that. And it wouldn't be what it is without both of our participation.
Behind every good woman, there's a good spouse somewhere. Actually, that might not be true.
Yeah.
But in many herbalists, successful herbalists experience, their spouse is a big part of, like Rosemary Gladstar for sure, Deanna Batdorf, you, Aviva Ram, everyone I know that has been able to build something, their partners are quietly supporting them in the background, often working for them and with them on it. And I don't have that. My wife is not. We don't work together. Um, for all the right reasons. She's a great cheerleader, right? But she's not a support system. So for those that don't have the spouse that's behind there, what I've found is that there are students that want to do work trade and actually want to be apprentices and that willing to help. And yes, those are rare and they're good to interview for because you're giving them free education in exchange. It's a work trade. But that's how I found this idea of like, who is your support system? Who are the people that will help you and figure out an online course or build a retreat or whatever this is? I found the people that don't have that employee or don't have that spouse, that actually there are very beginner, often students that do have value in exchange, that do have other skill sets, but don't necessarily have the cash or want to be able to work with people one-on-one that are extremely valuable. So just to plant that seed also for
Yeah.
those that are looking for outside of family, who are the people that we can rely on, that I believe truly the team is what makes the dream work. Um, I've always had support with employees, primarily with what I do, or assistants, or some sort of work trade students. And it really helps a lot to actually get the things done because you have people that you're accountable to that will help you move forward, idea partners that you can talk to about what's an option. It's really viable. And I think what you're saying, Shana, is more true than it's not on the people that are doing it for a living and doing it successfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, work trade is I could not run my apothecary, like I make products, but it's not my main thing. It's more of my creative outlet and I love doing it, but like I have a large apothecary and there's no way I can maintain it without having a work trade person. But then also through the years, like I have somebody right now who's like, "Hey, I teach about e-commerce and I teach about website development and I was looking at your website and there are parts of it that I love, but there's parts that I would love to help like raise them up to a level because your teaching is at such a high level and there are some parts of your website that are not conveying that level and I would love to help with that." And I'm like, "I love your perspective. Let's talk more." And so yeah, having that team, and it may be teams that are like going to be with you, or it may be people who are just doing work trade for a year or two and then they're going to move on, but like it's all about that community and recognizing that we can all help each other because we all have different areas of expertise. Every person has experience that I don't. And is it viable for to be part of my business? Maybe, maybe not. But everybody like that's that whole like imposter syndrome. When you hear somebody like, yeah, like, you're in your 20s, you have some imposter syndrome. Yeah, well, yeah, keep living. But like when I hear people in their 40s being like, I don't know, I've only been doing this for 10 years, like, honey, you have been doing this for 9 years longer than most of the people out there. So like we all have life experience. So the more we can work together to harness that life experience to help propel an idea, a business, a community, whatever it is, like there's so many resources that are not all necessarily like physically tangible, but still incredibly valid and necessary to share.
Thank you so much, Shana.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have you back. Thank you so much for all the wisdom shared today and your story and your inspiration and your passion and love for this industry and this path. It's really tangible and very exciting. Hopefully it'll spread as you know, love and passion generally does for any field. So thank you so much for sharing this time. And I'm very, very grateful for your time and your energy today and sharing with everyone. And if people can find you, I did share your link with this community, but if they're interested in finding you, do you have an email address they can email you?
Yeah, my easiest email address is just our business, sagecountryherbs@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. I think many people will be interested in your offerings. So thank you so much, Shana. Thank you, Monique, for being here. Thank you, Brittany. Have a beautiful rest.
Thanks.